As you can see, the future is so bright for Liverpool that I have to put my shades on. Maybe not. We are here at the open training session. As you can see, the players are getting on with it right behind me there, and I'm sure there's one thing that you all want to know. Yes, Mo Salah is here. Yes, he is training. Yes, he looked like he was enjoying himself despite the storm that he has caused. But I do have some actual good news for you, Liverpool fans. Trent Alexander-Arnold is back in training. He looks like he's enjoying himself as well. He's there with the rest of his teammates. And we've seen Federico Chiesa as well. Although it's not 100% sure if he's going to be fully involved in team training, he looks like he has got a little bit closer to being involved in the Liverpool matchday squad. We'll have to wait and see on that. Obviously, we haven't had any real indication from the manager exactly how he's going to react to what has happened over the last 48 hours. But we've still got that to come. We are just about to wrap up here, and then we're going to head over to Anfield, and we'll be putting some questions to him about exactly that. Well, I won't be. The others will. 3, 2, 1. Hello everyone. So I told you I wouldn't be in the lab. I thought I'd use somewhere a little bit better than that. It's the end of what's been quite a long and interesting day. Been sat here in this room listening to Arne Slot, listening to Andy Robertson, listening to Jude Bellingham and to Carlo Ancelotti. And they all have very interesting things to say. So, without any further ado, let's get to it. So, as is customary, I'm going to give you my top 3 takeaways from the press conferences. We'll start with Liverpool, because that's where you really care about. And obviously there was only one question that everyone was waiting to be asked, and Arne Slot knew it was coming, and that's my top takeaway number 1. Unmoved by Mo Salah. Now, something we've seen from Arne Slot whenever he's had to answer this contract question, he knows exactly what they need to do. He knows the way that this press thing works, and he understands that they've all got a job to do. But that doesn't mean to say he's going to make it easy for them. Now, just like before any big game, Slot was prepared for what he had to face, and his plan has always been to kill any kind of controversy with kindness and joviality, and he's been unwavering in that since the very first press conference I've been in. And to be fair, it suits him very well. It kind of disarmed everybody in the room, and I think the thing that you could really take away from what he said is that Mo Salah hasn't changed. Despite all of this noise that's going on around him, all of this controversy, Mo Salah is still Mo Salah. He still turns up to training with the most professional head on. And this was something that was echoed by Andy Robertson as well. He had a very interesting line that if the players don't care about it, then why should we care? And when I say players, he also referenced Trent Alexander-Arnold and Virgil van Dijk, who are also in the same situation. And it's something you see a lot within elite sport. Teammates can be involved in contract decisions. For example, in the NFL, sometimes you'll see players sitting out, literally going on strike to try and get a better deal. There's some players who are requesting a trade in basketball, and yet the teammates are just happy to let them get on with it, and when they're back, they're back. And this team seems to adopt that same method with Mo Salah and Trent Alexander-Arnold and with Virgil van Dijk. And guess what? It seems to be working, because they're all still playing very well, and Liverpool is still top of both the Champions League and Champions League. So it's hard for us to argue with it right now, even though the questions are going to continue until either or all of them sign on the dotted line. I don't think it's something that Arne Slot's going to be that concerned about in the immediate short term. A second top takeaway is team news. Now, this is the second one in a row where team news has become very important, and that's probably because the injury list is so long. It was added to this week with, unfortunately, Kostas Tsimikas turning his ankle ahead of the game against Southampton, which means that he's going to be unavailable for a couple of games, which means that Andy Robertson is probably going to be asked to go again tonight, or maybe even Joe Gomez will come into contention. We'll have to wait and see on that. But Trent Alexander-Arnold is fit enough to be back in the squad, but once again, reading between the lines, you can see that he's still not 100% ready. I feel like if this game wasn't Real Madrid, then maybe he wouldn't be in the squad as yet. There was something telling that Arne Slot said. He said that we'll use him if we have to, which means, number one, he doesn't want to. And if you think about the way that the teams normally work, if he was in contention to start against Manchester City, you'd expect him to play some minutes against Real Madrid. So the fact that Arne Slot doesn't want to makes me think that that might be a bit too far away as well. The second part of that is the idea of what would cause him to have to. And it's obviously some issue with the guy who probably is going to start, which is Conor Bradley. Now, all of us have been very, very keen to assume that Conor Bradley is a fully fledged member of the squad, and he is. He's proven that in his performances. But it's also important to remember this will be his very first Champions League start. So far, he's had 3 appearances that have totaled 15 minutes only, and he's going to come up against one of the best players in the world in Kylian Mbappe. So the idea of he might have to could involve an injury to Conor, but it could also involve him getting in trouble in terms of being a threat for a red card. It could also mean that he's having a really bad game and he needs to be bailed out. These are things that are obviously on Arne Slot's mind and hopefully won't come into play during the game, but we have to kind of flag them up as a possibility. Unfortunately for Federico Chiesa, it appears like he's still not quite ready to join in with the squad, but every day that he's out there training with the teams is another day that he gets closer. I think most of us in the fan base now have been able to be a little bit more sanguine about when we get to see him, and just hope that when he is ready, he's able to come in and really contribute. Now, the third takeaway is about the power of Madrid, something that we know very well about. Now, this was something that Andy Robertson was asked about early on, and he mentioned although that he and a few of the others have faced Madrid on many times without being able to get that win. There are plenty of them in the squad for whom this is a new experience, who haven't faced Madrid, and he said the same about the Madrid side. There's plenty of them who haven't come to Anfield, who haven't played Liverpool yet. So, although there is lots of recent history to call on in this fixture, for a lot of them it's still going to be new. So the experience that those of them who have dealt with it before will probably be invaluable, and he'll be passing that on to some of his younger teammates. As for Arne Slot, well, he was asked this question by me, so let's check that out right now.
Hi Arne, this is the 4th consecutive Champions League campaign that Liverpool faced Real Madrid, and the 5th out of the last 7 times. And as Andy Robertson referenced when he was sitting up there a minute ago, Liverpool haven't won any of them in that time. When you're trying to plan for this game, do you go back to some of those games and maybe pick out some of the positive moments, for example, Konaté's performance in the 2022 final, or maybe even going 2-0 up in the last time they came to Anfield? Or do you just draw a line under it all, try to get rid of all the potential emotional, psychological baggage, and just say it's a brand new game, start from scratch?
You've told me so many things that I only thought, is this all your questions always an advert to replace me in the future? Because the knowledge you have about football and data is enormous. I wasn't aware of the fact that we played them so many times. I was aware of the fact 2 years ago they were, if I'm correct, I say they because I was not part of it, but we were 2-0 up, I think. And I think I even used that game to my team at Feyenoord at that moment, saying Madrid always finds a way of winning that game, because the moment when it was 2-0 up, there was no one that would have expected that that game would end up being 5-2 for Madrid. But that is what makes them so special, that they can turn games around like that, but they can also take the ball tomorrow and just dominate you from the start. And yeah, probably one of the reasons is that they have a great manager for years already, and they have great individuals as well, and that makes them one of the best, maybe the best club in the last 5 to 10 years in Europe.
I'm a little perturbed that Arne Slot seems to think that I'm angling for his job, which is not the case. I'm quite happy for him to be the Liverpool manager, although I wouldn't mind being in and around it again every now and then. Maybe on the coaching staff, see how it goes. But anyway, in answering this question, he says something that he said quite a few times across the press conference, which is that Real Madrid always seem to find a way. He went as far as to say that he actually referenced the last time they came here in the famous 5-2 game for his final side as a way of showing that this is the mentality you need to have to be a top team. You can be 2-0 down in the cauldron of Anfield and still come away with a 5-goal win. So this is something that he's clearly keenly aware of. He knows the power of Madrid. He knows the psychological hold that they potentially have over so many opponents, because he referenced that in a later question as well. So despite all of the talk of them being injury hit, despite all of the poor form they've potentially seen so far this season, the idea that Kylian Mbappe has upset the apple cart, upset the rhythm, Arne Slot is clearly expecting the very best version of Real Madrid that's possible out on that pitch on Wednesday evening, and he's preparing his team for that, which is good to know, because frankly, while we here, fans and pundits alike, can talk about, well, it doesn't matter if Liverpool don't win this game and it's not that big a deal, it's a bigger deal for Real Madrid than it is for us, and they're not quite as good, so maybe we can go there and turn them over. Liverpool and this team are treating it exactly as importantly as you would hope they are. Arne Slot has been very, very keen to stress once again that the most important game is the next game. He's not even thinking about Manchester City right now, even though you and me and quite a few others probably are. All of his focus is on Real Madrid, and hopefully that's exactly what it'll take to win this game. Now, because it's a European game, we also got to hear from the Real Madrid side, and Jude Bellingham was the guy who was up in front of the cameras, and as always, he had some very, very fascinating things to say. I always enjoy listening to Jude Bellingham. He's got a curious mix of being very respectful, very forthright, but also very confident, which means that he's not afraid to speak his mind, but he'll also say please and thank you to everybody in the room, which, I don't know, I just kind of like that. Now, one of the first things he mentioned was about his own position on the pitch. He's had to play out wide left quite a few times so far this season, which is ironic considering that both Vinicius Jr. and Kylian Mbappe actually quite want to play wide left up front, but he's found himself in those positions. And it was interesting to hear him talk about it. I think it was a clear message to his manager that while he will happily do whatever he wants, he doesn't actually like it out there. He actually said himself, I'm definitely not a wide player, which is the biggest hint you could possibly give that he doesn't enjoy playing out there. He said he plays his best football when he's able to be free and roam through the centre, and unfortunately for Liverpool, I think that's exactly what we're going to see tomorrow. It appears to be the case that Kylian Mbappe will have that station out wide left, and he will be able to play centrally as he did in the weekend against Leganés, and he was able to get a goal. Interesting though, he said about his own form that he believes he's actually been playing quite well. It's just he hasn't had the headlines because he hasn't been scoring the goals. Now, he said also that he's a very honest assessor of his own form, and I believe him when he says that. But he's also a very confident young man, so he'll be able to tell you when he thinks that he's not doing right, but he'll also push back if you think he's not doing right, and he does. So we'll have to wait and see exactly what influence that'll have on his play when it comes to the game tomorrow evening. Something else that was very fascinating to hear, that he talked about his experiences with England over the summer and about how he felt like he was probably being scapegoated and how he was perceived as being the bad guy by a lot of people in the aftermath of England's loss in that Euro final against Spain. And this was something that I noticed as well, frankly. A lot of the stories that came out around after that tournament was how he was an unpopular influence in that dressing room, how some people perceived him to have an air of arrogance, that he felt like he was above certain things. Now, Jude spoke about this for the first time, I believe, and he referenced the fact that there were plenty of the press who he didn't want to talk to during that summer, and he believes that that influenced the tone of a lot of those stories. And frankly, you can understand how those things happen. But he gave more insight into the story because he said that the reason why he didn't want to speak wasn't a kind of aloofness. It wasn't a case that he was just wanting to concentrate on his football. It's more that there had been some incidents involving the press that he didn't like. Some of his family were doorstepped, including his grandma, and it kind of rubbed him up the wrong way. So his method of dealing with it was to just not talk to anyone. And once again, I can kind of understand that. It is fascinating to me though that he's decided to take all of this out into the public arena now, at the end of the previous regime and the potential beginning of a new one, when there's perhaps a clean slate being drawn under a lot of things that was going on before. And he also rather pointedly mentioned the fact that there were lots of fresh faces in the squad at this last meet-up in the international break just gone, and how that was a help in returning his smile, as he put it. So that kind of tells me that maybe the problems wasn't just within the press. Maybe there were some issues in the dressing room with certain characters, and maybe this new regime will start to weed all of that out. But for those of you who are England fans out there, and I know some of you are, it's an interesting read from him. And considering that all of the heroics that he performed in that Euros weren't enough to get him even in the top 3 of England Player of the Year, somehow, inexplicably, that went to Cole Palmer, despite the fact he didn't start a game in that whole Euros tournament. You can see how he will clearly burn with him, and maybe that was more important to him than the Ballon d'Or conversation, which, according to him, he wasn't really that concerned with at all, which makes him an anomaly within the Real Madrid world. And finally, on Jude, there's the question that we all wanted to know the answer about: Liverpool. How close was he to coming? How close was he to giving us what we all wanted before we had our hearts broken? Well, frankly, the news there is bad, because it wasn't really that close, according to Jude. He said that he'd spoken to quite a few clubs, but he didn't really want to go into detail out of respect for them. And once again, you can see he's quite genuine when he talks about respect and those kind of things. It's something that he clearly values. But he did have a hell of a line when he talks about Madrid's. I think what the line was: when Madrid knock on the door, the whole house shakes. Yeah, that's a bar and a half. And unfortunately, it's something that we're going to probably have to deal with in the immediate interim until we see exactly what Trent Alexander-Arnold's question is going to be. Now, he was obviously asked about his good friend Trent, but he decided that he wasn't going to talk about that either. Once again, respectfulness coming through. He said that he didn't want to come into his own house and talk about him. He was a Liverpool player, and he will consider him a Liverpool player until he's not, which I can't like as well. I think it shows a level of class that a lot of people believe that this boy is lacking. So you can say what you like about him. I think what we have got here right now is a very good footballer who's going to be keen to show his best on the stage that we get to see him on tomorrow night at Anfield. And finally, let's talk about his manager. It was a really, really interesting insight into what Carlo Ancelotti has to deal with and what every Real Madrid manager has to deal with, because there were times when it kind of felt like he was under siege. A lot of the questions that he was being asked were very forthright, very blunt, you could almost say. I mean, he was asked outright who would be playing right back. Would it be Freddy Valverde? Would it be Lucas Vazquez? Obviously, he didn't answer that question because he's an experienced manager, but there was lots of questions around injuries and around what could have been done differently to maybe solve some of these injuries, with the implication being that maybe there was someone to blame, with it either be in the club, with it maybe be in the country. Carlo seemed to bat all of those back, and there was one line that he put in there that was really important and probably kind of shows how he feels on the subject, in as much as that he said that the obvious thing that people weren't talking about with all that is how many games all these players are playing, and they're playing too many games. Something that's clearly still really a hot topic amongst elite footballers. And when you consider that Real Madrid are going to have to be playing this ridiculous Club World Cup at the end of the summer, you can understand why Carlo Ancelotti is so concerned about getting this sorted. So it'll be interesting to see whether there are any developments on that and on the Club World Cup between now and the end of the season. Now, I had the pleasure of asking Carlo a question as well. Let's have a listen to that.
Stuart here, TalkSport International. Liverpool and Real Madrid have met many times in the Champions League over the last 2 years, including a couple of finals, but Liverpool haven't been able to win any of those games. Obviously, they're two teams you're expecting to be in the latter stages, but do you think a win in this game can influence it if perhaps you do see each other in the later stages again this season?
I think it's an important game. That every victory gives to you more confidence and more belief in the future, of course. Liverpool did really well until now, better than us in the domestic competition. But now we are back, and we hope to play a good game tomorrow with a strong rival. But for the future, it's too far. The end of the season is too far, and hopefully we hope to be there as usual.
Now, Carlo's been around the block plenty of times, so he understands the rhythms of the season. And when he says it's too soon to really kind of get any idea from this game as to a future meeting, maybe in the semi-final and final, to be honest, I have to believe him. He knows what he's talking about. But once again, that old Madridness came through in his answer. That little, as usual, that he dropped at the end there shows exactly how they feel about the situation. As I mentioned before, it doesn't matter what people are saying about Real Madrid in November. It matters what they do in April and May. And he still believes that his team are going to be there in April and May, and they're going to be the team to beat. And frankly, it's hard to argue with them. Evidence and history suggests that's the case. But what I will say is I do believe that there is going to be plenty of psychological merit for Liverpool if they're able to finally beat their nemesis in Real Madrid. We've talked about how many times we've played them in recent years and haven't been able to get the win. Andy Robertson didn't believe that it was a big importance under the idea of revenge or anything like that, but it's more the fact that it's a big game. It's a game that everyone's talking about, and this is the games that all the players want to be involved in. So the hope is that they can come into it with the confidence that they've shown that's got them to the top of both tables, and they can really attack this game. And who knows what can happen if they get a win here for both Liverpool and for Real Madrid. Who knows, maybe they won't make it to April and May, and we may be having to play someone different. We'll see. Well, that's it for now. I should probably wrap this up before anyone else comes in and tries to interrupt me or tries to drag me off the stage. So I want to give a big thank you to Liverpool FC for letting me use their crib for the day. A big thank you to everyone else here in the room for being quiet for the last 10 minutes. And thank you to all to listen. As always, I will tell you about my Substack page. Go and listen to all what I've got to say there in writing form. There will be another match report after the game tomorrow. I'll be sitting in the press box watching Liverpool against Real Madrid. I'm sorry, Steve, I'm not going to be sitting up there in the gantry alongside you. Hopefully, Liverpool still get the job done though. I'll see you again soon.